everybody. Welcome back for another Bible reading. Before we get started, I want to share something with you. So, as you know, a couple weeks ago, I explained to you that I was going to be dedicating the first of my work week, the first of my days, to the Lord. And that I was going to start doing things that would put God first before anything else. And one of those things includes making some Bible reading videos for you. Well, last week I tried. I tried to start my work week out that way, and it took 4 times of going through the sermon, videotaping it, and it didn't work. The first 2 times there was something wrong with my SanDisk card, the computer wouldn't read it, and then the second 2 times I had no sound. So I finally gave up. I had other things, I had appointments and schedules that I had to adhere to, and it really bothered me. I was like, Lord, I tried, I honestly did, and then I just got so busy during the week, and but we're going to try again today. We are just going to give it another shot. And what is on my heart to read to you comes out of Genesis 7 and 8. And so what we are going to read about today is the story of Noah and the ark. Now, most all of us, I realize there are probably still some people out there who do not know the full story of Noah and the ark. So I'm just going to give you a background leading up to where we are now. God has told Noah that he wants him to build this boat, this ark, and it gives him very specific plans on how to build that. And what's unique about that is up until this point, it had never rained. There was no need for a boat. Water just sort of seeped up out of the ground. And this was a sort of a strange request by God to Noah. And Noah was faithful and he obeyed. God had told him that I want you to build this boat, and when the time is right, you're going to bring all these animals into the boat, and I'm going to cause it to rain and flood the land, and everybody that is outside of the boat, everything that is outside of the boat will be destroyed. In faith, took Noah many, many years, lots of years, and he finally got this boat built, and now we are to the point where God is going to tell Noah that it's time to get into the ark. So God had kind of scanned over the earth, and he saw that there was not anybody who was righteous except for Noah. Everybody's heart was bent towards evil. It was turned away from God. They didn't want anything to do with God. They were not living the life that God wanted them to. So he said, I'm just tired of man. I'm going to be done. Well, now we're going to pick up on chapter 7. Then the Lord said to Noah, Go into the ark, and you and your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Take with you 7 pair of all clean animals, the male and his mate, and a pair of the animals that are not clean, the male and his mate. The 7 pairs of the birds of the heavens also, male and female, to keep their offspring alive on the face of the earth. Okay, I'm going to stop there for just a second. One of the things that we tend to think, and it's true, about Noah's Ark is we think that God only spared 2 of every animal, a male and a female of every animal. And while he certainly had them come in pairs, there were certain animals that there were 7 pairs of. In other words, 14 of these animals. And that sometimes gets lost when we're listening to this story. We sometimes forget that there were actually 14 of certain animals. These are the clean animals. The unclean only came in 1 pair of 2. All right. Let's see. I will send rain on the earth 40 days. It says, in 7 days. So in other words, he's telling this what's going to happen 7 days from now. I will send rain on the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living thing that I have made I will blot out from the face of the ground. And Noah did all that the Lord commanded of him. Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters came upon the earth. And Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him went into the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Of clean animals and of animals that are not clean, and of birds, and of everything that creeps on the ground. 2 and 2, male and female, went into the ark with Noah, as God had commanded Noah. And after 7 days the water of the flood came upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 7th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep burst forth. And I'm going to stop there for a second. The great deep refers to the sky, the heavens, okay, the sky. And the winds of the heavens were opened, and rain fell upon earth 40 days and 40 nights. On the very same day Noah and his sons, Shem and Ham and Japheth and Noah's wife and the 3 wives of his son with them entered the ark. They and every beast according to its kind, and all the livestock according to their kind, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, every winged creature. They went into the ark with Noah, 2 and 2 of all flesh, in which there was the breath of life. And those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in, as God had commanded him. And the Lord shut him in. The flood continued 40 days on earth. The waters increased and bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. The waters prevailed above the mountains, covering them 15 cubits deep. And all flesh died that moved on the earth, birds, livestock, beasts, all swarming creatures that swarmed on the earth, and all mankind. Everything on the dry land in whose nostrils was the breath of life, he blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man and animals and creeping things, and birds of the heavens. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those who were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days. We're going to pause there. We are going to read some of chapter 8 too, but I want to pause there for just a minute. Remember, I always tell you there are 3 ways that we look at scripture when we're studying. 1, what does it say? We have to have reading comprehension. We have to read the words on the page, right? Which we just did. 2, what was it saying to the people of the time? What do we have to look at? What was going on in history and culture, those types of things. And lastly, what is it saying to us today? We're probably going to focus a little bit more on what it is saying to us today than anything. But I want you to notice something. We sometimes forget. We have this idea that it rained 40 days and 40 nights, and it did, and then that was it. And then, oh, good, it stopped raining, Noah gets out of the ark. Well, that's not true, because the water stayed on the earth, stayed covering everything for 150 days after that. So that's a long time, right? So I want you to think about what Noah is going through in that ark there. It's quite possible that he's floating around, the water has finally stopped, they don't hear raindrops anymore, and he's thinking, God, is this it? Or have you just left us in this ark to die? Is this where it all ends for us? So now we're going to start to read chapter 8. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. So God never forgot about Noah. He never forgot about what was going on in the ark. So when it says here that God remembered Noah, it doesn't mean like, oh, I forgot to turn the stove off and I just remembered. He's not talking about that. That's not what this scripture means. What it means is that God had remembered and he paid attention to them, okay? This was the time that he is going to do something about this. God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heaven were closed. The rain from the heavens was restrained, and the waters receded from the earth continually. At the end of 150 days, the water had abated. And in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. And the waters continued to abate. In other words, they're starting to slowly move back until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. Okay, so now Noah has been in this ark for a very long time. He's been there at least 190 days that we know of, and then a couple more months even. So it was on the 150th day that the waters start to recede. But it was a few more months before the boat finally settled onto the top, or onto Mount Ararat. Okay? And then the waters still continued to roll back even after that. At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven. It went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. So this raven actually went out and looked around for a very long time. Then he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her in and brought her into the ark with him. So now he has sent out a dove, and the dove goes out. She cannot find dry ground, so she comes back. Noah brings her back in. He waited another 7 days. So, another week has gone by. And again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So now this time, Noah sends the dove out, and guess what? It comes back with an olive leaf in its mouth. Have you ever heard the expression, I'm extending an olive branch to you? It's basically saying I am making peace with you. And so, let's make peace with one another. And so this was God's way of saying to Noah, everything's going to be okay. I haven't completely destroyed you. You are not destroyed. I'm going to bring life back. There is hope. Things are going to come back. And to prove it to you, here I'm extending this olive branch. I'm showing you this olive leaf, okay? So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. In other words, he knew, oh good, there's dry ground out there. Then he waited another 7 days. So now you're sitting there, you're going, boy, I know there's dry ground out there, but I'm still going to wait another 7 days. And he sent forth the dove, and she did not return to him anymore. So he sent the dove out, and she found a place to nest, and that was the end of that. In the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried off the earth, and Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. In the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth had dried out. Then God said to Noah, go out from the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you, bringing out with you every living thing that is with you, of all flesh, birds and animals, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm in the earth, and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So Noah went out, and his sons and his wives and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, and every bird, everything that moves on the earth, went out by families from the ark. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and took some of every clean animal, and some of every clean bird. Now you've only got 14, and he's going to take some of these, okay? Every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings to the altar. And then the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma. The Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man. For the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. Okay, so we read chapters 7 and 8. We actually read all of 8. I was only going to read a little, but we read all of it. And now we're going to dissect a little of what we read. And here's what I want to talk to you about. How does this apply to us today? So we see here, I've got a little bit of a cold still. I seem to have this perpetual cold. It's really just allergies, but it's always going on. So bear with me. How does this relate to us? You know, I'm not Noah. God's never told me to build a giant ark. He's never destroyed every single living thing around me. However, one of the things I think that most of us can relate to is sometimes God will show us ways out of a situation to protect or help us, or teach us something. And it seems like we're going through this storm of life, and eventually the storm ends, right? And we're like so grateful that the storm has ended. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some residual things. Noah still had to stay in that boat another 150 days before the water even receded. So they're just floating around out there. And I know that there are times in my own life where I have felt like, God, is this where you're going to leave me? On one hand, I am grateful. I have gratitude that God has taken care of whatever situation. He's protected me. He's helped me. He's provided for me, whatever the case may be. But on the other hand, there might still be some residual things going on where I'm like, but is this it, Lord? Is this it? Do you have plans for something more? I feel like I'm just floating around out here, and we may have to go through some things for a while before we actually see the full intent of God's blessings on our lives, or the full intent of what it is He's trying to accomplish. Something I think that is very, very, very worth noting when we look at this, especially at the end of chapter 8, is that once Noah and his family and everything were finally released from that ark, when they were finally able to get out of there, they didn't just live out of there in bitterness and anger, and I'm sure there was some grief and sadness over the loss. I'm sure of that. There had to have been, because they were still human beings. But the very first thing that they did, the first thing, was that they made sacrifices. Noah built an altar, and he made sacrifices of some of those clean animals that were in the ark with him all that time. So you have to think about, that was their food. That was it. There were only 14 of these animals, of certain kinds of them. In some cases, only 2, but those would have been the unclean animals. And yet he still took some of those, and he sacrificed. He put them on the altar, and he gave them back to God in an act of worship and an act of thanks, in spite of the fact that he was still grieving. And so that is important for us to remember too, that there will be times in this life when we go through things that are horrible, that are in our eyes horrible. But if we keep our focus on the Lord, He is faithful to us. He is faithful to take care of us, even though we can't see the future. Noah may have not known that he was ever going to get out of that ark. And here he was, still faithful to God in all of that. So I don't know if maybe right now you're at a point in your life where you feel like you're just floating around and you're waiting for God to move back the waters of some things in your life. Maybe you're waiting for Him to open that door of the ark. But I want to encourage you that there will be a time when you will have opportunity to thank God for all that He has done. And that actually, you can thank God every single day for what He is doing and what He has done. But you will have an opportunity to worship out of joy and excitement and see the fulfillment of everything that God has intended to accomplish, what He started out to accomplish. And when that time comes, I hope that you remain faithful and you remember God just like He has remembered you. He has not forgotten you. Jesus says, I will never leave you or forsake you. So I hope you got something out of today's reading. I hope it touched your heart. I hope it touched your life. And I will see you later for another reading. God bless.